Today we're talking about the fourth fascial fitness principle, proprioceptive refinement, and exploratory micro movement.
Welcome to the Pilates Show, where we explore creative and innovative Pilates tips and techniques to help deepen the skill level of the movement educator while having fun. I'm your host, Jennifer Gianni, and today we're going to be talking about the fourth fascial fitness principle, proprioceptive refinement, and exploratory micro movements. A lot of the information that I'm getting for this episode is from an article written by Robert Schlepp and Devo Mueller. If you want to access the article, please look at the link below to find out more. Now, in this article, they talk about the fascial fitness principle of proprioceptive refinement, and one of the ways to refine your proprioceptive skills, a very important way, is exploratory micro movement below the amplitude of an inch. So this is very small brain-body type of activation. They state in the article, using interoceptive stretch sensations as a guideline, it may be possible that post-operative or other fascial adhesions could be partly loosened by the careful utilization of such micro movements. It's pretty exciting. They go on to say that, in addition, such tiny and specific local movements can be used to bring proprioceptive attention and refinement to perceptually neglected areas of the body whose condition has been described with the term sensory motor amnesia. And all of us have these blind spots in our body. And so this exploratory micro movement in various different positions and using various props or pieces of machinery can help to uncover these hidden or blind spots in our body. The Pilates studio is the best place to start to explore and employ these exploratory micro movements. And the reformer is one of the best pieces of machinery to find this, because the spring is going to talk so perfectly to our connective tissue about that tensegrity system of our connective tissue that's going to help to gap the bones of our spine. And not even the bones of the spine, also the bones of the pelvis and the femur, all the way through the knee, ankle, and the foot here. So we'll start with some simple footwork. So you go on to the back, you find that perfect Goldilocks place for your feet, where your feet and your toes can relax. The main cue that I really love to use for this next sequence is from my sister Casey, the Go-Go Gadget spine, the Go-Go Gadget body. So I'm going to press out just a little bit. So from here, I'm already talking to the spring. I've already preloaded the spring just a little bit. So that spring has entered my spine, and my spine has now been pulled apart, all the coils of my spine. But it's also gapping the bones of my pelvis and my femur, even my knees, even my ankles here. So everything is activated and it's being decompressed. And so the challenge here for the client when they find this is to keep the carriage still, but I want to see more pre-activation, more pulling apart, more length in the spine without moving the carriage, right? So that's very subtle, and it's going to be almost not noticeable to the outside eye. You'll find it on the exhale. So on the exhale, I want to see the spine lengthen, the sitting bones widen, and see that very subtle drop of the femurs into the hip sockets. without the carriage moving. And what the client will feel is that they've shrink wrapped the musculature around their spine and their pelvis, and they feel more of a lift. Everything's moving upward. So the next example of this micro movement would be to put the balls of the feet onto the bar. You could also do this on the arches, and have your client come out to a long leg. So they don't have a hyperextended leg, but they have a straight leg. The feet and the ankles are easy. Now, the challenge here is, can they bend their knees without letting the carriage move down? So that will definitely floss their connective tissue, especially through the back line of their body, and it'll help them, again, to find this feeling of tensegrity through their connective tissue. So from here, I'm going to do the smallest little mini bend of my knee, trying not to move the carriage. And so to find that, and I'm not sure I did a very good job because I was talking there, but to find that, I have to go into that same feeling of my go-go gadget body. Now, there is a rotational component in the knee. So that first little 15 degrees of movement in the knee when I bend it is a rotational component. So I actually, biomechanically, I should be able to bend my knee just a little bit without moving the carriage down. So bending the knee, a little mini bend of the knee. And can I feel when I bend the knee that my sitting bone and my heels keep the same distance, or I even increase that distance? So again, I'm talking to my spine, the blooming of my sitting bones and the dropping of my tail. And then you can slowly, slowly have them come back to that straight leg. Again, going into my go-go gadget body, easy ankles, easy knees. And on my exhale, I do that little tiny bend of my knees, but I try to keep the carriage where it is through the oppositional length through the back of my body. And as soon as I do that, I feel that gentle hugging around my pelvis and my lumbar spine that's actually helping to, and this is definitely below the amplitude of an inch, what's happening in my spine. It's millimeters of length between my vertebrae, but it's starting to, with that pre-engagement that I'm creating, it's starting to pull my spine apart. So we're going to look at another exploratory micro movement exercise that my friend Lesley Powell taught me. This is in her anatomy workshop that's going to be coming up on our site very soon. And this is such a simple but effective exercise that you can do with your clients in this upright, functional, seated position that gets them right away into that feeling of pre-engagement, which is creating that movement or that length that's below that amplitude of an inch. This is happening again in millimeters around our spine, this gapping of the bones of the spine. So Chel's sitting on the ball. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cross my arms and place my hands under her knees. And when I ask her to find this length on an exhale, I'm just going to give the gentlest counter tug of her knees towards me. So you can see, and we planned this a little bit before we started filming, but this is normally how she sits, which is really a little bit on her coccyx and sacrum, not ideal. So what I'm looking for, as she finds this really subtle lift through the center of her body, that she's brought more to the center of her sitting bones, away from her tail and sacrum. So we'll just take an inhale to prepare. And then on the exhale, you're thinking about scooting the ball back with your wide sitting bones as I pull you forward a little bit. Good, and then you can just relax, and we'll try a few more times. Deep inhale, root your feet into the floor, open your mouth, exhale, and allow yourself to grow through that's better. Good. And then relax. Nice. And what I'm also looking for here, because I'm looking at the front, so I want to see some length through her belly. Inhale. And again, exhale, opening the mouth, growing through the back of the body. Good. And then gently release down. And so what I want my clients to experience from that, to have a sense of, is width in the sitting bones, a little bit of an action in the pelvic floor maybe, that sense of that fascial pull at the lower belly, and a tiny bit of tone around the lumbar spine as they find that. So the whole fascial corset is on and working in synergy. Well, I hope you enjoy that, and I challenge you to use some of these exploratory micro movements with your clients in privates and in group classes to give them that as a preset before you go into the bigger movement, and to challenge them to see how much pre-activation in these very small micro movements that they can get before going into the bigger movements. Jacqueline wrote in on the forum and she asked a question about her clients who have lower back issues, bulging discs, and things that prevent them from flexing the back. So they've been told by their healthcare professionals that they shouldn't flex their spine, especially in their lower back. And so at Jacqueline's studio, they want to welcome everyone to the group classes. And so for those individuals, they have certain rules. So for those individuals with lumbar spines that are not allowed to flex, they do things like just hinging back, a flat back hinge every time the other people go into spinal flexion. So that would be something, I'm guessing, like this in a mat class. This may be more doable for a lot of people in a reformer class on the sitting box to do a flat back hinge. I can imagine that people who are very tight in their hamstrings and around the back of their pelvis and their sacrum that are already having different low back issues, that they may not be doing this with the best form. If you're going into this, you want to keep it very, very small and be really strict with your clients who are doing this, and make sure that they're not starting in a slumped position and going back from there with no activity in their deep abdominals or their deep back muscles. So that could be actually harming and bringing them in the other direction that we want to bring them into. So Jacqueline asked for some advice on some different exercises that we might do. And so we're going to do part one during this session. And then in the next Pilates show, I'm going to give you some more sample ideas for Jacqueline. So the first place that I would go to would be to maybe ask these clients, instead of this flat back hinge on the mat, to do a flat back bridging. This might work out better. So you would get on the back, and then I'm using the SmartSpine pillow to bring my pelvis up. But you want to try to find some kind of propping under the lower back and the pelvis that gives your client a little bit of head start. And from here, already my lower back feels like it's at the spa. So my sacrum is supported, my sitting bones are wide. I can actually open my upper back much better here. So I would give this to your clients who have different lumbar spine issues. And so on the exhale, every time everyone else is doing spinal flexion, they're going to come up into a flat back hinge and then lower themselves down with that same flat back. And so they're going to be working their corset muscles. They're going to be working that fascial connection between their deep abdominals all the way into the lower back. Now, another thing that we have to take into account is that even though their healthcare professional is saying no flexion ever, how do they live their daily life? How do they brush their teeth? How do they pick something up off the floor? How do they do yard work without ever finding flexion in their lower back? It's impossible. So when they're doing those daily things at home, since they're not used to consciously thinking about how to find good flexion, they're probably doing it pretty badly when they're slumped over the sink brushing their teeth, or slumped over trying to pull weeds, or picking up that pencil that just fell on the floor. So it might be worth, in the studio, micro movements, small subtle movements, but helping people to find safe flexion in supported ways in the studio. And this could be one place where it could really be beneficial. So I have my head start. I do the flat back hinge to come up, right? And the floor is not very far away from me. So maybe I open my upper back and I start to think about tail up to the ceiling until the top of my pelvis finds the pillow. And then from there, I can think about the discs in between L3 and L4, L4 and L5, lengthening my sacrum and dropping my tail down. And so that kind of focus, along with bringing the floor up, so I'm not having to go very far down, I'm able to find that just right amount of hammocking in my back to gently send the message of flexion without collapsing, without jamming, without trying to find too big of a range of motion. All right, and then from there, always cue your clients to roll to the side and then to use their arms and hands to push themselves up. That's it for today. If you have a comment or question you'd like to see answered in an upcoming episode, comment below on Facebook, Twitter, or on the forum on our site. See you next time, and never stop learning. That's it for today. If you have a That's it for today. If you have a comment or question you'd like to see, what? Because I'm starving. I'm starving. It's going to keep Alzheimer's and dementia away. That was going to be my best take.